There are people who enter your life like gentle earthquakes, not destroying, but reshaping the very ground you stand on. They arrive without fanfare, often in the most ordinary moments. A conversation in a coffee shop, a glance across a crowded room, a friend of a friend who says something that stops time for just a second. You don't recognize them at first. How could you? They look like everyone else. But something invisible shifts when they're near. The air feels different. Your thoughts move in new directions. The stories you tell yourself begin to change. These are the people who don't just pass through your life. They alter its trajectory, not through grand gestures or dramatic interventions, but through something far more mysterious. They see you in a way that makes you see yourself differently. They carry a quiet magic that awakens parts of you that were sleeping. Psychology has studied this phenomenon for decades, searching for the invisible threads that connect certain souls across time and space. There's a moment that exists before logic, before names are exchanged or stories are shared. It happens in the space between heartbeats, in the pause before words form. Your nervous system recognizes them first, some ancient part of your brain that still remembers how to read the invisible language of souls. You might be standing in line at a bookstore, scrolling through your phone with the practiced indifference of modern life. Then they appear in your peripheral vision, and something shifts, not dramatically, not like the movies, more like the way dawn creeps across a landscape, so gradual you almost miss it, until suddenly the whole world looks different. Your body knows before your mind catches up. There's a subtle quickening of pulse, a barely perceptible straightening of posture. The same mechanisms that once helped humans recognize friend from foe, safety from danger, now alert you to something far more complex, the presence of someone who will matter. Research in social psychology calls this thin slice judgments, our ability to form remarkably accurate impressions of people within milliseconds of meeting them. But what science struggles to quantify is the deeper recognition that happens in these moments. It's not just about reading facial expressions or body language. It's about sensing resonance, the way two tuning forks vibrate in harmony when struck. Sometimes the recognition comes through their eyes, not their color or shape, but the quality of attention they carry, the way they look at the world and eventually at you, with a kind of curious tenderness, as if they're perpetually on the verge of understanding something beautiful. Other times it's in their voice, not the words they speak, but the spaces between words. The way silence sits comfortably in their presence, how they listen with their whole body, creating a kind of sanctuary where thoughts can emerge half-formed and vulnerable. The recognition might arrive through something as simple as how they hold their coffee cup or the way they pause before crossing the street. Small gestures that reveal an entire philosophy of being. A carefulness that isn't cautious, but reverent. A presence that suggests they know something about the sacred nature of ordinary moments. What makes this recognition so profound is its quality of inevitability. Not in a fatalistic sense, but in the way rivers recognize their path to the ocean. There's a naturalness to it that bypasses the usual filters of social interaction. The small talk that feels immediately unnecessary. The pretenses that dissolve before they're even constructed. Your subconscious begins cataloging details with unusual precision. The way afternoon light catches in their hair, how their laughter changes the acoustic quality of the room, the specific shade of concentration that crosses their face when they're thinking. Your mind is already archiving these moments, as if some deeper part of you knows they'll become important later. This recognition often comes with a strange doubling of time. Minutes stretch and compress simultaneously. A 5-minute conversation feels both eternal and impossibly brief. You find yourself hyper-aware of the present moment while also feeling nostalgic for it, as if you're already missing something that hasn't ended yet. There's also a quality of coming home that doesn't make logical sense. You've never seen this person before, never heard their voice, never shared space with them, yet their presence feels familiar in a way that transcends memory, as if you're remembering something that hasn't happened yet, or recognizing someone you've been unconsciously searching for without knowing you were looking. The recognition rarely announces itself loudly. It's more like finding a book you didn't know you needed, or hearing a song that perfectly captures a feeling you couldn't name, a quiet yes that emerges from somewhere deeper than thought. And perhaps most mysteriously, this recognition seems to be mutual. Even when nothing is said, there's an acknowledgement in the air, a shared understanding that something significant is happening, even if neither of you can articulate what it is. This is how life-changing people enter your world, not with fanfare, but with recognition. Your soul saying hello to theirs before your minds have even begun the conversation. They don't tell you who you are. They show you who you've always been, like standing in front of a mirror you didn't know existed, suddenly seeing angles of yourself that were there all along, hidden in the blind spots of self-perception. It begins subtly. In their presence, you notice yourself speaking differently, not performing or pretending, but accessing parts of your voice that usually remain buried beneath layers of social conditioning. The thoughtful pause you take before responding, the way your hands move when you're explaining something you care about, the particular quality of laughter that emerges when someone truly understands your humor. These people have a remarkable ability to create emotional safety, a space where your authentic self can unfold without fear of judgment. It's not that they're particularly agreeable or accommodating. Rather, they carry a quality of acceptance that runs deeper than approval or disapproval. They see you clearly, including your flaws and contradictions. And somehow this clarity feels like love rather than scrutiny. In psychology, we call this unconditional positive regard, Carl Rogers' term for the therapeutic stance of accepting a person fully, without conditions or reservations. But what happens in these transformative relationships goes beyond clinical concepts. It's more like being witnessed by someone who understands the language you've been speaking to yourself in private. You begin to notice patterns in yourself that were invisible before, the way you deflect compliments as if kindness were dangerous, how you make yourself smaller in certain situations, unconsciously accommodating others' discomfort with your brightness, the stories you tell about your limitations, and how many of them aren't actually true, but they also reflect back your hidden strengths, qualities you possess but couldn't see. The wisdom in your questions that you thought were just confusion. The creativity in your problem solving that you dismissed as weird thinking. The depth of your empathy that you'd learned to apologize for, as if caring too much were a character flaw. This mirroring effect works both ways. As they reflect you back to yourself, you begin to see them with unusual clarity, not the idealized version that early attraction often creates, but their actual complexity. Their own patterns of hiding and revealing, the ways they've learned to protect their tenderness, the particular brand of courage it takes for them to show up authentically in a world that often rewards pretense. There's a phenomenon in neuroscience called neural mirroring, the way our brains automatically mimic the emotional states of people we're connected to. Mirror neurons fire both when we perform an action and when we observe others performing the same action. But with these special people, the mirroring goes deeper than neurological mimicry. It's more like tuning forks finding their resonant frequency. You start noticing how they handle difficult emotions, not by fixing or avoiding them, but by creating space for them to exist. Their comfort with silence teaches you that not every moment needs to be filled with words. Their way of holding sadness without drowning in it shows you that feelings can be honored without being permanent. Sometimes the mirror they provide is uncomfortable. They reflect back behaviors and patterns that you'd prefer not to see. The way you interrupt when you're excited, speaking over others in your enthusiasm. How you retreat into humor when conversations get too real. The subtle ways you punish yourself for not being perfect. But even these uncomfortable reflections come wrapped in compassion. They don't point out your flaws with cruelty or judgment. Instead, they create conditions where you feel safe enough to see these parts of yourself clearly, without the usual shame or defensiveness. The mirror effect often intensifies over time. As trust deepens, the reflections become more nuanced and precise.